We are recording today on the lands of the Jagera people, and we acknowledge the traditional elders here, past, present and emerging. Hi everyone, I'm Andrea. I'm a former registered nurse and midwife and a community advocate.
Hi, and I'm Tim. I'm a digital marketer and a small business owner.
Today we're actually talking to Claire Garton, who is also a community advocate, works very hard and goes to just about every event that I can possibly see. Think she'd go to the opening of an envelope, as my mother would say. How are you, Claire?
Yeah, good, thanks. Hi, Andrea. Hi, Tim. Thanks for having me today. I'm coming to you on the lands of the Yuggera people.
Right. Oh, lovely. Okay, so today I thought we'd have a discussion because I feel like you have a lot of knowledge on, what kind of infrastructure we might need as we move through the coronavirus period. Of course, we've kind of found out at this point that we're going to have to live with it. We may have, some sort of mutated form of coronavirus living with us well into the future. And, whether we're immune to it, whether we, our bodies are somehow built to, survive this thing, or whether we have vaccinations that help us survive this thing. Who knows? But we're going to have to move through and live with it. So I thought we'd have a talk to you about what you've noticed is the infrastructure needs that we might need in our community. One of the problems that seem to be popping up at the moment, and I know it's a huge thing to talk to you about first up, is inland rail, actually. Yep. And I know that I've seen you at a couple of community forums. Can you tell us what the community feels like? What's the pros and cons about this inland rail problem?
Yeah, look, it's a tough one. Essentially, the inland rail is the big project from to make a freight line essentially from Melbourne to Brisbane through an inland route. And the problem locally here in Moreton, where I'm sort of standing for, is that the termination of the rail line in Brisbane and is not at the Brisbane port, but at 35 kilometres inland from there, and it's at a place called Acacia Ridge, which is sort of a suburban area with lots of houses and things like that around it. Now, the problem with that is that essentially the freight that's being transported will have to then be transferred from that rail terminus at Acacia Ridge onto trucks to go to either the Port of Brisbane or to final destinations. Now, so the biggest concern I've heard is that these additional trucks to move this freight, it's going to be about 5,000 trucks a day through sort of our area here.
That's huge.
It is huge, and I don't think everybody is fully aware of this problem yet, but some people are starting to become aware of it.
So with those trucks on the road, we have things like, the extra like vibration of the traffic actually happening on the ground as well. But, you also have the vibration of the trains.
Yeah, so they're talking about, quite long trains. They're talking about 1.8 kilometre long, double stacked container trains coming through the southern areas of Brisbane, and they will terminate at Acacia Ridge, and then there'll be a lot of noise as well associated with the unloading of those containers. There are already some container trains that come into Acacia Ridge, but nowhere near. I think it's like 2 a day or something at the moment, and even with that, during the night, you sometimes hear them when they accidentally drop a container on, and it just ricochets the sound throughout the whole sort of area. So there's going to be more of that sort of noise through the night as well, plus the general associated noise with unloading of those containers onto trucks and all of the truck noise, and just the additional pollution of the trucks driving through everywhere and additional congestion traffic. I think that's going to be the biggest issue associated with this project as far as my area is concerned.
But then there's the pros on that is like maybe truck drivers are thinking, yay, we've got jobs.
Well, look, that is true. that's potentially true. But yeah, look, I've heard rumours of deals being done with trucking companies and the port and all sorts of things. But I don't know if there much truth to that yet or not. But there's a lot of behind the scenes negotiating happening with trucking companies and about all of this. So the whole trucking aspect and the roads congestion is going to be huge, and most people aren't aware of that yet. Another big problem is that I have with this project is its business case doesn't stack up without it transporting a large amount of coal from New South Wales up into Brisbane as well. So there'll be a lot of additional coal trains coming through, and of course that brings coal dust. And I think they've said that they may spray the top of the coal wagons to try to prevent dust from emitting as the trains go through. But that's well and good. But the biggest problem I've heard is that actually it's the empty trains coming back where there's still residual coal on the insides of the wagons, and because just the nature of trains, it's vibrating all the time, and therefore that coal dust.
And those coal dust particles are so tiny that you can't see the coal dust actually dispersing through the air and getting into people's lungs. So I mean that's a real health problem for everybody.
Yeah. So that's another aspect of this project that I think needs to be looked at a little bit more. And then there's the route itself coming down from through the sort of the western area of just Queensland into here. There's going to be a lot of farmlands that are going to be dissected by the proposed current route, and I think that's going to be problematic for some farmers, and just train lines tend to divide, provide a bit like rivers in a way. They make a real line of demarcation through communities and through farms and things. So that's something else that we probably need to consider. But look, so
it's a big federal election thing, isn't it, for the people of Logan, and also for the people of like the southern parts of Brisbane. So, I mean, if we just kind of make it clear for where this train line it's going from like the Port of Melbourne or something, is it, or somewhere down there, and then going all the way up to Toowoomba. And then they're making another part of the train line, which they haven't costed for, but it's costing billions, to come down the Toowoomba Range to Acacia Ridge and terminating at Acacia Ridge. And then they're thinking of doing another part of the train line from Acacia Ridge out to the Port of Brisbane, or doing truck carriage of the coal from Acacia Ridge to the Port of Brisbane.
Well, so the proposal is for coal to go through Acacia Ridge to the Port of Brisbane, because those wagons and those trains can actually fit through the infrastructure that's there at the moment.
Yep.
The problem is the container trains won't be able to, because they're literally too big. And between Acacia Ridge and the Port of Brisbane, there's quite a number of road bridges, tunnels, all sorts of infrastructure where it just, the city's built up around the train line, and it's just nowhere near cost effective to allow or to be able to build the train infrastructure over to the Port of Brisbane. So, the other option is to instead go from Toowoomba and build the train line going up to Gladstone. Yeah, so that's an option that a lot of people have put forward, and there's a lot of advantages for that as well, because firstly, the Port of Gladstone is a publicly owned, it's a state-owned port, which means that there's a lot more control over it by us, the people, and government over how it all operates. Whereas the Port of Brisbane's a private operation, so there is a lot of merit in that. Obviously, the appropriate environmental impact studies and consultation would have to occur with people between Brisbane and Gladstone. However, the Gladstone mayor, I understand, is fully on board with this project, as is a lot of other people in Gladstone. And look, to be honest, it's a good opportunity to create regional jobs as well in a city that sort of might actually have to diversify a little bit in coming years as we, inevitably transition to renewables away from coal.
Yeah.
Because that's a good point, Claire, because I was wondering about, this is obviously like a bit of a long-term project that needs investment in the project now. And then thinking about the viability of this into the future, like where countries are potentially importing less coal because of commitments that are made. What is there also that thought in the community of we're building something that might not actually be a viable long-term market?
Yeah, look, at the moment, the business case is only viable with transporting quite a lot of coal. And like, I'm all for public infrastructure and especially rail. But I think, more thought needs to go into other uses for that rail line. I can only see the demand for containerized freight increasing over time. I mean, just the nature of how we are. There's always more demand to transport logistics around. And so I'm not sure of the exact numbers of how that's expected to increase over time. But it's definitely something that's going to have to be considered on this route because, coal, as much as they're factoring in coal all the way up to 2050, I think it is in the business case. That's a long way away, and I think the push is on globally to reduce coal, extraction.
Right. Now, Tim, you and I were having a chat before, and about people in our local areas who quite a few years ago, around sort of 2010 to 2012 time, would have put solar on their roofs. And, it seems that now we're hearing from community members who are getting, sort of 8 cents per kilowatt for their feed-in tariff. And, they're kind of a little bit like, I thought this solar system was going to pay for itself eventually. And they're feeling a little bit lost. And you've heard this as well from people around the place. Like, I mean, there are batteries there for storage. I'm wondering, is this like something that you've heard of as well? Like, Claire, like, what are we going to do about this problem?
Yeah, look, to be honest, even getting 8 cents now is actually becoming quite of a challenge. I know people that are struggling to get more than 6 or 7, which of course is quite, upsetting to a lot of people when you're buying it back. You're buying back power at, say, 24 cents. I mean, they sort of, they can see, and everyone can see, there's obviously something wrong with this. So yeah, look, it's absolutely a problem, and and obviously the power grids and the power companies are going to fight the localization of power storage because it goes against their business model. But
right.
But I think it's decentralization of power is something that's probably going to happen. Even if it's on a micro scale to start with, it's gonna there's going to be little, even like buildings, apartment buildings, and things like that are going to have their own sort of micro storage and micro supply. I mean, that's how I see it. And look, I'm all keen. I'm a bit of a tech nerd, so I'm all keen to get storage as soon as I can. So we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, and Tim, are you a sporting fan? Are you into the Olympics?
Oh, me personally, this is an interesting and loaded question. Yes, so yes, I am into the Olympics, but yeah, obviously now that Brisbane is a host country in the next decade or so, it makes you then think about what this means when it's actually in your backyard. Where when you look around the world at host cities, the Olympics aren't necessarily kind of the economic boom that they're kind of sold to be. But do I like the Olympics? Yes, I think as a sporting event, I think it's a great event to bring people together. But we're now faced with this being in our city and affecting the greater area of Brisbane, Logan, even down to the coast and up to the sunny coast. So it's going to have an impact everywhere. I think it's just now about us trying to, as a community, as a broader community, like extract the value from that. How about you? What are your thoughts, Claire?
Yeah, I think you sort of hit the nail on the head there, and I absolutely agree that the economic benefits that they're always presented about having the Olympics. I don't think they stack up now, and I'm not sure if they ever did. But the opportunity that exists is for construction of infrastructure and services that that's where I see that the actual opportunity is, and not necessarily with the money, the financial aspects of for small business, and that, because they always seem to be let down. Like the Commonwealth Games at the Gold Coast, it was all hyped up. It was going to be a boom for business, but a lot of local businesses said that they'd had a downturn. People just didn't turn up. So the opportunity exists around infrastructure, around public services, and a legacy of that. So with the Olympics, look, I have mixed feelings about it. I do think it's a good opportunity to showcase the elite sport around the world. But I think the commercialization or the way that it's presented as an economic benefit needs to that model needs to sort of change a bit. And I also have concerns around displacement of disadvantaged and vulnerable people from areas around where the Olympics are going to occur, and this is shown time and time again on any host cities that cleansing of the community effectively, to push people out, and that these sort of aspects are things that I think we have to address with having the Olympics in Brisbane, and we can stand, if we can address these sort of things, we can stand tall and proud and say we're doing things differently. And I'd like to also see net zero Olympics as well. I think if we could have a carbon neutral Olympics, including all of the construction and everything to it, I think that would be, on the world stage, that would be a great thing to showcase as well. So
that displacement that you mentioned as well, Claire, I thought it was really quite fascinating. It was actually Amy McMahon that raised this point that when the city was going, putting its bid together, didn't actually talk with residents, like the residents that are right there, that are going to be, potentially impacted, if indeed it is the case that the Gabba is going to be kind of like the heart of the event, and when residents are actually finding out about it, it's like, oh, and we're in our final stages, and come on board, and it's just like, wow, the lack of community consultation here was just really remarkable.
Yeah, look, that's a theme that comes up with so many projects and different things where I feel governments and elected representatives have just lost the focus on what's important, and there's just no consultation with actual people on the ground with so many of these decisions, and they're all done in boardrooms and talking to corporations and business lobby groups, and and then the people on the ground are sort of left to and hear the media announcements, and that's the first they hear of these things. So that, I find that really disappointing, and I think that's why I like to why I'm part of the Greens, especially is as I feel like with the Greens we're focused on people and the community first, and not just about profits driven by corporations or business lobbyists, and we don't have those political donations or anything from corporates. So
this is why I thought it was really interesting when they had all of the Olympic committee go to a luncheon the other day at the RNA, yet Gina Reinhardt was there, and I thought, like, I wouldn't have thought that she was like into the Olympics. Like, you
wouldn't think so, would you? I mean, I'm not sure what part she's going to have in it, but that's interesting.
Yeah,
I wasn't aware of this.
I mean, obviously, like, it's money, but like, that's where, when you talk about political donations and, corporate donations and stuff like that, like, it's quite obvious. I mean, because she's not there for the sporting prowess, she's not there to clap the athletes. I mean,
it's all about influence, isn't it? It's influence, and they buy influence by providing political donations. So the system's very broken. And and
and from these crowds of people that seem to be quite angry at the moment, especially around Logan. Right now we've got crowds and crowds and crowds of people who are standing up saying, we hate politicians.
Yeah.
You can see why, because it's blatantly obvious that there's a lot of corruption, a lot of, backhanded stuff going on. And they just,
disgusting, isn't it?
they don't care.
No, they don't. And, they're fighting tooth and nail to stop having a federal integrity commission, because they don't want to be held accountable. So, it's like, no, we don't need this. And talking against the model that's in New South Wales, which which could be improved as well, but still it's fairly strong and robust model. But yeah, just fighting it every step of the way. And I look, people, no wonder why people hate politics. And it's sad because politics affects pretty much every aspect of our lives ultimately. But they purposely make people not interested in politics so that they can, get away with whatever they want, really.
Yeah, it makes people feel so powerless that, in an abusive relationship, eventually you shut down. You try and talk and try and talk and try and talk, but eventually when you realize you have no voice, you just shut down. I think you see both sides in Logan. You'll either have the people rise up and say, we're not going to take this anymore. And it's against things that are quite logical as well. So there might be, something that's really good for their health, that they're saying, no, we're not going to take that either because we don't trust you about anything, and so they rise up about absolutely everything. But then you'll get the other people who will just shut down completely and they don't want to hear from you ever again, and you can see that that's classic trauma response, and I don't think these people who are in politics, like the old white, pale male, stale, whatever they call it, I don't think they've ever been in a traumatic experience in their entire lives, like the people of, working class, lower socioeconomic sort of, struggling people. I don't think they've ever had a traumatic experience in their entire life where they have experienced powerlessness like that, where they've had that choice of either rise up against every single thing that people are trying to suggest for them, whether or not it's good for them, or shut down completely. And I think that's what we're seeing in our community. But so they're not even trusting the people that they should trust, which is quite dangerous because then, their health is at risk,
Yeah, absolutely. And look, I'm doing a lot of door knocking at the moment, and it's what you just said is very consistent with the experiences I'm having on door knocks and stuff. So, I mean, so even to the north of Logan here, it's, very consistent experience where there's just, as you say, lack of trust in government and they, all people just shut down totally and just don't want to have a bar of anything. Look, it's sad, but I can see where they're coming from. Unfortunately, it's we've just got to, clean up our system and make politics represent the people again and not just the corporations and billionaires.
Yeah. Have you got any ideas for, infrastructure for schools or hospitals?
Look, it's interesting actually with schools. So there's a big increase in families around this area where I am. And the schools are the primary schools at the moment are all growing really strongly, which is great to see. And they're great thriving schools, and they're really impressive. High schools in the area, we used to have a high school in the suburb of Salisbury, a state high school that is, in the suburb of Salisbury, but unfortunately Campbell Newman, it was one of the ones that he chose to sell off back in the 2012. And so I think there's going to be, a bit of pressure. So he sold that off to to Life Church, who actually run a school. They're now like a evangelical sort of religious school. but I think there's going to be a real demand, in the next few years for more state school in this area. I'm not sure about what capacity is left in sort of the local school, the high schools, but it's something that I think has been neglected over a number of years. And it was because there wasn't the demand. The demand was decreasing for a long time, but in recent years, a lot of families have moved into this whole area, and obviously that puts more requirements and more demand on public services. It's hard to say about schools, to be honest with you, much more than that. But
I'd always advocate for inclusive education. I'm an advocate for that. Yeah. So, I mean, that's my thing. That I'll always push for that. I think we need to move away from segregated education between the disabled people and able-bodied people. There's a lot of research for that, and it's a loaded question, but there's a huge movement pushing the two together. But it means, and the reason why people are against it is because they think that we mean just closing down all the special schools and moving everybody into the same school. But it's not like that at all. It's actually reimagining the entire way that we do schooling.
Absolutely right. Absolutely right. And there are some strong advocates in this area around that, actually, which is great. So, spot on. I'm all for inclusion, absolutely, in all aspects of it, inclusion.
Yeah. So it means, having a way to access the curriculum for everybody. And it means providing wheelchair access, for example, in public schools. It means providing, safe rooms or areas where people who are overstimulated can go to, of their own accord, not because they were sent there. These sorts of different ways of accessing the curriculum that suits the individual. It means blind people, deaf people can go to public school, which they haven't been able to in the past. But it also, for me, means that, able-bodied people have knowledge and experience of how to communicate and how to be in the community with a disabled person, which they don't at the moment. At the moment, they see a disabled person and they don't know how to act. And I have that experience because, I use a wheelchair, and when I'm using my wheelchair, they really don't know how to act. I had this experience with one politician who is quite well known. I won't embarrass him, but he's quite well known. And I went and introduced myself, and he came up to me and put his hands on his knees and came down and screwed up his nose, and he goes, "Hello," you like this to me.
Oh my goodness! Oh my goodness!
And I thought, oh my God, you've never met anybody in a wheelchair before. No, I'm not too.
Yeah. Look, that's an interesting experience, isn't it? And
I thought he was going to offer me an ice cream or something, and I thought, oh God, I'll take that.
Yeah.
Give me a chop chop.
It just shows, yeah. There's fear of when there's lack of information, lack of education about aspects, and people just don't understand. And look, it comes with trans people and all sorts of things as well. It's similar experiences, but you're absolutely right. It's inclusion from a young age. Just breaks down all of these barriers.
Yeah, and I suppose, you would get that as well, that if people haven't met somebody who is trans, they don't know how to act or be or, they're just like, I don't know what to do.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. And to some people, it's a curiosity, and they just, and look, that's, I'm all for answering questions when people, to educate people and help people understand better. And there's I get a lot of that sort of people asking all sorts of questions because they're just so, curious. But I do get a lot of negativity as well, unfortunately. And a lot of people for some reason think that trans people are pedophiles and, weird stuff like this. So, yeah, look, it's I don't know where it comes from, but there's a lot of that sort of stuff as well. But you've got to have thick skin to put yourself out there in politics in any aspect. But yeah, it's being being of any sort of minority as well, and putting yourself in politics, I think you even have to have thicker skin.
Oh, you do. Yeah, totally. Yeah. Okay. Well, have you got 3 big ideas for infrastructure to help the community move through this period of the Rona, and help our community build back better, Claire?
Oh gosh, 3 big ideas. I don't know how big they are, but
small.
Well, I think, as a country, I really, one of the things that's sort of really important to me is that I think we need to have a treaty with our First Nations people, and effectively, how we are now is founded on invasion and dispossession of First Nations people, and until we're honest about the fundamental injustices and ongoing impacts of that, I feel like we can't move forward into the future as a country with respect to our self-identity and things like that. But on a more local level, I'm very much into sort of local politics, local issues, community. I'd love to see things like a library in Maruka, for instance, more community gardens and social spaces, and dog off leash parks, and a lot of those sort of local infrastructure type of things. I'd love to see more public transport, for example, a City Flyer bus all the way down into Sharn's Corner in Adelaide. I'd like to see the Tennyson rail line reopened, the Cross River rail stations, rebuild, and more active and transport and segregated bus lanes. I guess that all wraps up into sort of community type of things.
Yeah.
And I don't know if that's what you would consider a big idea, but these are sort of my more local level ideas. And again, on a broader scale, I think
no wonder you're so busy. You got lots of ideas.
I love the local stuff, and but also economic inequality is really out of control in Australia, and I see that as because big corporations and billionaires have got just far too much power. Really, we need to, as I said earlier, we need to take the money out of politics, take the corporate donations and cash for access out. And I strongly believe if we can solve financial inequality problems in this country, we can solve so many of our more localized social issues as well. Inequality just drives so many of the social issues. And as I said before, we need an independent anti-corruption body, but one with real teeth.
Yeah.
And look, ultimately, I really think we need to kick the Liberals out, get the Greens in balance of power, and ensure that the next government can go further and faster on tackling this inequality and the climate emergency.
That's a lot, but I'm really inspired by what you hope to achieve. So
Go. And you're doing a bloody good job there.
Yeah.
Go big or go home. Yes.
Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
No, that's great. That's great.
Thanks so much for talking to us today, Claire. Really appreciate it.
Thanks for having
Claire.
me on. Thank you very much. I really appreciate it.
Yeah. So good to talk to you again, Tim.
Well, as always.
Yeah. You've been listening to Beyond the Rona. Captioned audio is available on our YouTube channel, or you can catch up with previous episodes at beyondtherona.com. We'll catch you later.